People just dropped their entire waiver budget on Jerome Ford. And yes, while Kevin Stefanski did just come out and say, yeah, Jerome Ford's going to be our lead back, we still think they are both sells, him and Kareem Hunt, and we're going to tell you why. First of all, the other night, you obviously saw he had a 69-yard rush, Jerome Ford did, which was very nice when you think about it. However, when you do take away that rush, he had 37 yards on 15 carries, which is 2.64 or 2.46 yards per carry. I know it's a small sample size. I get it. But number one, they did not bring Kareem Hunt for no reason. Jerome Ford is not going to be a workhorse back there. Number two, the Browns haven't actually looked all that good offensively this season either. The biggest reason, however, we are selling both Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt is because we think this is going to be a pretty heavy rotating committee backfield. If you'll also remember, Pierre Strong Jr. has not been totally off the grid this season. He is going to get some touches, we think. However, he does only have 2 carries this season, but we think that he is going to be able to get some run now that Nick Chubb is out. We think that him and Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford are all going to get run. And when you're talking about an offense right now that's struggling to move the ball, you're talking about a heavy committee backfield, which it will be a heavy committee, on a decent to bad offense. To us, this is just like the Commanders. This is even similar to the Chiefs backfield in the sense that when you have these heavy committee backfields, ultimately, one of the best fantasy strategies is going to be to stay away from it altogether. Looking at Kareem Hunt specifically, Kareem Hunt, when you're looking at his efficiency metrics last year, he was 60th in true yards per carry, 49th in yards per touch, 29th in evaded tackles, 37th in breakaway run rate, 38th in yards. Kareem Hunt was not good last year, is what I'm trying to say. And so Kareem Hunt, I think there are going to be people running to the waivers to get Kareem Hunt after this announcement. If you do get Kareem Hunt and somebody wants him from you, you should sell. Now, Jerome Ford, again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. Jerome Ford, that you had people dropping their entire waiver budget on Jerome Ford, which in my opinion was an incredibly bad idea. Incredibly bad. I think there will be much more valuable waiver claims as the season goes on than Jerome Ford. Yes, we all know what Jerome Ford is capable of as a talent. Yes, he's young. However, again, if this is really a heavy committee backfield, if it's really going to be that mediocre of an offense, I don't think we're going to be comfortable staying with these guys at their current price, given what you can sell them for in fantasy football right now.
Yeah, not at all. And the next guy that we're going to have here as a sell is going to be Kendre Miller. And I think with Kendre Miller, it's been very interesting. A lot of people asking, should I start Kendre Miller in week 3 because of assuming that Jamal Williams potentially doesn't play. He was banged up in the Monday night game. Regardless, I mean, Tony Jones was getting red zone carries. And I think that's kind of the reasoning behind why we're considering maybe starting Kendre Miller in week 3 is if Tony Jones can get red zone carries, why can't Kendre Miller? But I think when you're looking across the board, across the NFL, all of the rookie running backs this year, the first games that they started with the exception of Bijan Robinson and even Bijan split carries, like all of them started slow. Roschon's was a fluke because he got a bunch of garbage time opportunity. Like no running back has really started well. And a lot of rookie running backs still have a lot of questions to answer. Put on top of that, the fact that Kamara is coming back after this week. He's coming back week 4. He will be playing. Why are we excited about Kendre Miller being healthy now? Like even though Kendre Miller is healthy and we're all excited, this is his first game in the NFL. And he's coming off an injury, so he'll likely be on a snap count. I'm not seeing it with Kendre Miller. I don't see the upside. I don't really understand it. I think Alvin Kamara is going to get every single valuable opportunity there, him and Jamal Williams, assuming Alvin Kamara is the one that gets all the receiving upside. I don't think Kendre Miller is going to usurp Jamal Williams anytime soon because they paid Jamal Williams. So it's not happening for me this season.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, and I think people are going to be a little bit disappointed when they realize that Kendre Miller is probably not going to produce a whole lot.
Yeah.
Next guy's going to be Mike Evans. And with Mike Evans, you do know Mike Evans is currently producing at a wide receiver 1 clip. Mike Evans was a guy that was going fairly late in drafts this year. I mean, right now you're looking at that and saying, okay, I just absolutely struck gold. We are going to bet that he does not continue that. And we also have a buys video coming out this week. Those are some guys we're targeting with Mike Evans in a trade package. For example, Jamar Chase. A lot of people are down on Jamar Chase right now, and people say, oh, nobody's making that trade. I guarantee you there are people in the comments that will say they've already made this trade because Mike Evans, I've seen him go straight up for A.J. Brown. I've seen him go for a bunch of ridiculous things, and he's faced the Vikings and the Bears so far. which are two of the easiest secondaries to score against for fantasy football. So we have to keep the context in mind while we're evaluating Mike Evans long-term. And when I say long-term, I mean for the rest of the season. Because again, while he is getting you a lot of points now, he does have Chris Godwin there. He is being thrown the ball by Baker Mayfield, who, yes, looks better, but historically not really supporting wide receiver ones in fantasy football. So we do have to keep that in mind as well. Overall, I do think Evans will continue producing, but I don't think it's going to be at the level he's at right now. And if you can find somebody that does think he's going to continue to produce at this level, then you sell him. I'm not saying sell him in all circumstances, but right now he's got a pretty good market value to move off of him and move on to another talented player.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason Evans has had success is because of his big playability and the fact that he's able to stretch the ball downfield or stretch the field and can get a 70-yard touchdown if he wants to.
Which is impressive for somebody.
It is very impressive for someone at his age, but defenses are going to figure that out. They're going to be like, okay, let's not let Mike Evans get the ball. Let's not let him take the top off of defenses. And then all of those opportunities that went to Mike Evans are now going to go to Chris Godwin, who has the lesser average depth of target, and he may even get some red zone opportunities as well. I just see that long-term being the more realistic result of the Bucs' current success. So it sucks. We love Mike Evans, the player. We'd honestly love to see him on a contending team this year if the Bucs end up trading him. But I mean, for now, this is not sustainable production. It just isn't. Russell Wilson's going to be our next guy, and he's coming off of a QB1 finish. Good for him. Everybody give him a hand. Anyone who watched that game knows that he sucked. I mean, he was straight buns, and like 10 of those points came in garbage time when he got a huge play to Brandon Johnson, the wide receiver. If you've ever heard of that guy, you get some extra points from us because I've never heard of him. And I think there's a reason. And because of that, Sean Payton doesn't have a lot of patience. They paid top dollar to a backup quarterback in Jarrett Stidham. I would not be surprised if by midseason, the Denver Broncos aren't contending. They're not competing. There's a potential that Sean Payton loses his patience and they have the backup quarterback and Jarrett Stidham starting in that offense at some point.
Wow.
It's a bold take, but I think it's absolutely possible. I'm not going to put all of my money on it, but I do think it's a possibility, and that's just goes to show how bad Russell Wilson really has been in the first two games, and I don't really see a lot of improvement coming anytime soon with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Tutu Atwell is going to be... Oh, I said absolutely. Dang it. I got to stop doing that. Tutu Atwell is going to be next year. And Tutu Atwell, when you look at the limited sample size that we've had this season, he is second in deep targets. He's 7th in yards per out run. He's 4th in yards per target. He's 7th in yards per team pass attempt. So somebody's going to look at that. Somebody's going to look at that and think, okay, I've got to get Tutu Atwell. Well, we'd be idiots to put Puka Nacua on here because Puka does, when you watch the film, when you look at the advanced metrics, he does seem like the real deal. However, Cooper Kupp is going to come back. He is. And while we are not going to say that it's going to hurt Puka Nacua just yet because we're not sure, and nobody knows about Puka, I'm pretty confident Tutu Atwell is going to be pushed down from an efficiency standpoint. And because of that, I do think that Tutu's not going to be as valuable as he is right now. I think there are a lot of people that really wanted Tutu Atwell's off a waiver this week. And if you got him, again, I am looking for a decent price, a guy you know is going to return on investment from a fantasy scoring perspective this year. Because with Tutu Atwell, that offense, it looks better than I thought, honestly. It looks better than I thought. But at the same time, when you're talking about a wide receiver 3 on an offense, and not to mention Tutu Atwell, I mean, a guy that's fairly unproven. He's in his 3rd season in the NFL and hasn't really done anything of note up to this point. So with Tutu, again, if you have somebody that wants him bad, I'm absolutely looking to move off of him for a much better and more stable depth piece to roster as the season goes on in fantasy football. Hey, real quick, if you need to fix your fantasy team or you want to take it to the next level to make sure you win your league, go to flockfantasy.com/domain. When you use code domain and you choose the Mother Flocker tier, we'll give you a team breakdown for your fantasy team. That may be a podcast, it may be on a live stream, whatever you might want, but we'll help you fix your fantasy team to win your league. Like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain. Let's get back into it.
So our next guy here is going to be Tank Dell. And I know a lot of people in fantasy right now are super excited about what Tank Dell did in his 2nd week in the NFL, playing against the Colts secondary. Let me say that again. The Colts secondary. It sucks. It's bad. It's horrible. And I'm not trying to downplay Tank Dell as a talent or what he has showcased in the first 2 weeks of his career. And I hope it's really successful. I think there's a possibility that it could be with CJ Stroud. But when you're looking at that offense, when you're looking at the other weapons there, you've got Nico Collins, John Mechie, and Dalton Schultz all as other receiving options there. And they've all gotten their own. I mean, even Dalton Schultz got 7 targets, and he's definitely not the focal point there. Tank Dell and Nico Collins got their own specifically because the Colts secondary was trying to guard them, and they're incapable of doing that. I promise you that we could totally be wrong about Tank Dell. We could. But some people are telling us that with Stroud's passing volume, you can actually have multiple wide receivers producing at that level again, and you can have Tank Dell and Nico Collins producing at the same time. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's possible. Again, because of who's lining up against those guys. Nico Collins, I think, as the veteran, as the bigger body, as the guy who's getting more yards after the catch, I think he's demonstrated in the first 2 weeks already that he is more ready than Tank Dell is, and he'll probably be more consistent from a volume perspective on a week-to-week basis. Tank Dell, I think, is going to be a lot more hit or miss. I mean, there's going to be some weeks where he lays some major duds. I think he could have a decent season, and you're right, it would be because of the passing volume, but Dalton Schultz could have easily gotten as much as Tank Dell did, if not more, if the game plan was different. And it will be playing other defenses. It just will. I'm not seeing it with Tank Dell. I don't have an issue with him as a talent. I don't have an issue with him personally. I really don't. I'm rooting for the guy. It was fun to watch him tear up our secondary, I guess. But I'm just, in fantasy, I think there's smarter plays. There really are.
George Pickens is going to be the next guy on this list. And this is more of a situational sell because I don't know. George Pickens in his last game, 10 targets, 4 receptions, 71 yards was his long. So he had a 71-yard touchdown. Everybody saw that. He had 127 yards total. And again, he had a touchdown. In his first game, he had 7 targets for 5 receptions and 36 yards. I mean, with George Pickens, this is really just us not believing in 2 things. Number one, Kenny Pickett, to support George Pickens as a fantasy wide receiver 2 even, which is probably what he's going for price-wise right now. After that huge game, you'd be selling after a huge game in a momentum shift. Number 2, Matt Canada. Not only is Kenny Pickett not looking super good, the offensive fluidity there in Pittsburgh has not looked good at all. And they have one of the least efficient offenses in the entire NFL on the ground and through the passing game right now. Yeah. So this is one of those things where with the Steelers, like in the past, you've kind of avoided Steelers wide receivers as well. Deontay Johnson was a little bit of an exception to that because he was a target hog. But with George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, these are guys that we weren't super high on going into the season. Now, number one, the offense looks worse than it did before the season, so that's further our argument. But number 2, to your credit, Deontay Johnson is out, and so people say that makes George Pickens the wide receiver 1. Yes, but again, the offense is not good. And with that, George Pickens, when you look at how he's been used, even over the last 2 years, he's not going to, I don't think he's an alpha, even when he is technically the number 1 wide receiver on that team. That's not what it looks like to me.
No.
At all. I think he's a big play guy. I think he could be a good red zone guy. I think the Steelers' offense is awful. I think their quarterback is not playing well, and I think you can get out on George Pickens pretty much on a momentum swing right now because everybody's looking at 127 yards on a touchdown and saying, I've got to get George Pickens on my team. There are fantasy analysts tweeting that he's going to be a wide receiver 1 this year. So
you can absolutely go out of your way to trade George Pickens and get a guy that has higher volume. You legitimately can. Yes. I promise it'll happen. Darren Waller is going to be our next guy, and we've been low on Darren Waller all offseason. We've talked about our issues with him, gotten crapped on for saying that he struggles with injury consistently over the past couple years, and it's been his hamstring, and it's been a repetitive thing, an ongoing thing. And lo and behold, Waller comes out this last week and says, so this hamstring, it's not a muscular issue, it's a nerve issue. And my eyes popped out of my head, and I said, excuse me? What? So you're telling me this isn't going to go away, basically. He basically announced to the world that this isn't going to go away. We're telling you to sell Darren Waller now while you still can, because at this point, we have said this before, we are not in the business of predicting injury. We never would have in a million years ever said that Nick Chubb was going to destroy his knee week 2. We never would have predicted that. If we did, you could have called us insane and you would have been right. Darren Waller for the last 2 seasons has shown a consistent pattern of injuring the same thing, his hamstring. He has. So I think it's okay to bet that may happen again this year. And don't come at me with this Darren Waller is the tight end 4 after 2 weeks. The tight end 4, he's put up 6 and 13 points. That's the tight end 4.
And
I think that shows you that Kelsey and Hawkinson are the only relevant tight ends in fantasy right now.
Kelsey didn't even play week 1.
And Kelsey didn't even play week 1. Like that's a joke that he's tight end 4. Like don't come at me with that. At that point, that means Njoku and Laporta and Kincaid are just as valuable as Waller is from a points per game perspective.
You can fade Darren Waller. You can still fade tight end. It's not too late to do that. You should fade tight end this year. I'm just telling you, unless you have Kelsey.
So, that's another big part of it. I mean, you can get something very irrelevant if you trade away Darren Waller in fantasy right now, and you can pick up a tight end off waivers, and he'll be just as effective as Waller will be this year because of how ineffective tight end is in fantasy this season. And that's going to be, I think, our biggest point, even past the hamstring.
All right, that's going to wrap up our sells. You probably disagree on a few of them. It's okay. We probably won't hit on all of them, but do us a huge favor. Make sure you drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers this season, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Help us get to that goal. Flockfantasy.com/domain is where all of our exclusive content is, including our rankings and our articles, and it gives you an opportunity to join our community. We'll give you personalized team advice for your fantasy team if you join the Mother Flocker tier. And again, you get to be on our Discord and you get to communicate with us as you start sits, trades, everything. We drop them all in there. We help you out. It's a good deal. Flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain for 30% off. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.